welcome to the bench. Horus, how you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing well.
I need to
I
get my
made.
timing. I interrupt you every single time. I'm always like,
Oh,
you're like, huh? And I'm like, Horus, how are you?
that's
we got
that's
a
good.
we got an awesome show for you today. Um, and I'm sure as many people are waiting very patiently, we may have an announcement for them. Perhaps.
Maybe.
Perhaps. I don't know. Let's see. No distinctive tournament wins that I saw. So let's go to events. And what do we have here?
I think December 7th, there's
December
going to
7th.
be more of a maelstrom,
There is.
which I am very excited to go to
And
with
then
Tanny.
we've got Bifter.
Yep, January 16th, right weekend of Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
Yep.
Then Frostbane,
Yep.
January 30th through the 2nd. Where's Frostbane?
Frostbane is in Florida.
Oh, cool. That sounds fun. I wish I could make that. That is the one nice thing. Even though I like the cold, it's also nice to go somewhere like Florida or California and beat the cold.
Yes.
Uh, Following that, Wolfpack opener will be February 22nd, which hopefully I can still go to. Normally it is the weekend before, and that is the weekend that my gigantic company thing that we've been working on happens. So I have to work all weekend. I'm so
Ooh,
excited for that.
that's rough.
So hopefully I don't also have to work this weekend. We'll see.
We'll see.
And the announcement is written on there. I didn't
There it
know if you
is.
meant that. But
Yes.
SKBC is going to be in Missouri, May 15th through 18th, and I will definitely make it a point to be there because they might make me with Wolfpack. So, and it's in Missouri. How could I not go? It's like a 3-hour drive. So,
Oh yeah. And I'll see. Maybe I'll try to pull some strings and try to get you on as an instructor and whatnot, because it's certainly a spot that I feel you've earned through Trial of Arms, and they let, if somebody's Belgarth exclusive, they don't have to be a Warlord to instruct. So I'll see what I can do.
I'd love to just go. So
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
fine
too
too.
worried about it.
Works for me. We have an awesome show. Speaking of teaching and coaching, we have an awesome. It's not going to be an STL Pickles. It's going to be. I think it's an hour north of St. Louis. Um, so SKBC and Thwack is doing their announcement right now. They waited till our show debuted so that people would hang out and check it out. But they're going to be doing their announcement as well right now,
Mhm.
and they'll have the exact details as far as the location. I think it's something river. I think it's like an hour north of St. Louis or something like that. But don't quote me on that specifically. Um, we'll be in Missouri. I'll tell you that much. Um, Speaking of coaching, we've got an awesome show for you today. I'm privileged to welcome two of my fighting mentors on the stream today. We have sort of returning Dalos and definitely returning Fox. Welcome to the stream, guys.
Glad to be back.
Heck yeah, heck yeah. Shall we take a look at our agenda? So, for our agenda for this show, who is Dalos? And checking in with Fox. How do you coach for a group? And then I did subtopics this time. How to speak in public, how to engage in a group. How do you coach an individual? How do you meet where they are? Subtopics being understanding goals, understanding assets and motivations. How do you craft a plan to coach? And how do you stay concise? Keeping it simple and how to digest information. And we're going to do things a little differently for this show. Instead of doing where I normally say, okay, let's hear your piece, let's hear your piece, we're actually going to do more of a roundtable discussion where we all kind of chime in and say our piece. I might give it to one of our guests to kick us off, and then then we'll go from there. However, let's go ahead and start. Delos, who are you?
All right. Hopefully it doesn't blow up my laptop this time, like last time when we talked about this topic. Um, uh, this is a topic that I can definitely say I'm an expert on, who I am. Anything else, it's an opinion piece, but this one I'm definitely an expert on. Um, I started fighting foam in 1989. You heard that right, 89. So I've been doing this for a very, very, very long time. I was younger than my son, who's 15 years old when I started, and I started hanging out with my still current friends and company mates who are the Torches, long-term friends at that point in time. Um, so I've been doing this for quite a while, seen many generations of fighting and many generations of technology, many generations of people who learn to be good at this game through technology changes, through fighting changes, through attitude changes, both cultural and inside and outside of fighting, and inside and outside of the fighting community. So, like, it's very interesting things that I've been a part of and watched and seen. So I'm excited to be here. Hopefully, I make it through the whole show. I'm very excited about this topic because the other piece of who I am, um, I said my favorite title is dad, which it absolutely is. Husband too, of course. The Heart of the Nation would be very upset if I didn't mention that I'm a husband. That's another one of my favorite titles. But coach has been a title that I'm actually definitely have the right to claim. I've coached basketball now for 5 years. I've been the varsity coach for a high school for the last 3. I was assistant before that and coached AAU even, which is travel basketball before that. So for about 5 years. As far as foam, I've been coaching and teaching people for a very long time. I've been to all the SKBCs. I'm the only one. So I probably will make St. Louis. There's no promises, but probably. Or not St. Louis, but Missouri, wherever it is. And then I didn't teach the first 2. I kind of instructed in the second one and the third one, because I assisted Arthon with his classes, and then after I got my sword belt, I instructed on my own from then on. I've been teaching ever since then, which was like 05 or 06. I've been a consistent instructor since then. And I've taught all across the country in many formats outside of SKBC as well. Generally, I teach combat computer. I've taught mini on one. I've taught spinning. They love me to teach board, but I feel like a lot of people can teach board. They love me to teach footwork. I definitely love to teach footwork. It's something, though, that I root into all of my classes because it's so important. So I don't feel like I have to just teach it separately. I have taught team tactics as well once, and there's probably things I'm forgetting that I've taught. I've taught with most of the instructors that have been around for a long time. I've had a lot of fun teaching with all of them. So I've been up and down, back and forth the country. You know, it's been a hell of a ride across these many years. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Let's we're gonna take it to chat and see if they have any questions for you. I'll start us off as usual. So the name Dalos, where does that come from?
Probably like many other foam fighters, I took it from a D&D character that I had way back in the day. I was playing in a game with he became my squire. He wasn't originally my squire, but he became my squire. He's now he is the first knight of Winter's Edge, Sir Lorik, but he was also my squire. But before that, he was a long-term friend of mine. We were friends in middle school before either of us played Amcard.
Oh, wow.
At Burnett Junior High here in Austin. So there you go. He actually told a story about how we became friends on their podcast. I forget what that show is called, but you can probably track that episode down where he talked about that, which was I remembered that, but it was pretty interesting. So, but that's how
Okay.
I got that name, just an old school D&D game. But apparently there is a language where that word means one who sings, which I don't, but I forget what language it is. I sing to myself. I shouldn't ever sing to anyone else. But yeah.
So you've only been in one fighting company or unit, right? You've never been in anything other than a torch.
Correct. I've been shortly after I joined the game, I met the people who were the original founders of the Chosen, which is not the entire company name, but the proper company name. And after that, I've been a member since I was basically like 15 or 16 years old. FYI, I'm almost 50, so that's how long I've been. There's never been any reason for me to go anywhere else. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I'm black and silver essentially, which is our company colors.
Yeah.
They'll bury me in black and silver. So
and you're also a member of the Golden City All Stars, which is not a unit, that's more of a house. Can you explain that?
yeah, so the Golden City All Stars was founded on the way to an HFS event by the person I just talked about, Lorik, myself, and Arthon, because they were running a team event where you had to have a team, and we decided we wanted to be our own team, the three of us. And Harry Arthon said, "Well, what would our team name be?" And I said, "Well, that's simple, because he was always Arthon of the Golden City."
Mm-hmm.
And so I, a long time ago, started calling myself Dalos of the Golden City to make fun of him. And then I said, that's a very simple thing. We'll just call ourselves the Golden City All Stars. That's an easy team name. And so after we started doing that, way back in the day, I was pretty much the first person, if you're mad about jersey gear being a thing in foam fighting sports, you can blame me, because I was the first person to do that way back in the day. I have still have a number 3 jersey that I wore that was a torch jersey. And then after that, the first GCA jersey came when we started that. And after that hit, people looked at that and they were like, that is amazing. I need that, because I had one made. Clawlibus was the one who originally made it. Sir Clawlibus was the one who originally made it with me. I went to his house and I'm like, I want this modeled after like the Dallas Stars gear. Here's what it looks like. And like, he worked with me. He came up with the city, and he's like, this is the city I want to use. We collaborated on it. He's amazing as an artisan. And boom, 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 it came together. And people were clamoring to become Golden City All Stars. So that's the origin story of the Golden City All Stars. And then from that foundation, we became this team of great fighters and friends that came from disparate companies but wanted to travel and fight together, because maybe we weren't part of the same company, but we all traveled and went to events and we were all friends. And so we wanted to fight together. So we started doing that, and then we started fighting together in Banner Wars, and basically won almost all. We didn't win every Banner Wars. That's probably a rumor. It's not true. We actually lost a couple, but we won most of them, and more people wanted to be Golden City All Stars, and a lot of people that were high end at the time did, and we've let very few people in since then because we feel like we're mostly retired now. I have some thoughts on what we should do with it going forward that I haven't really shared out yet, but we may do something with it. It's something that maybe should be passed down to the next generation. I'd have to talk to Harry, Arthon, about his thoughts on it. Lorik, who's mostly retired, about his thoughts on it, and then we could see what should be done. But yeah, that's how the Golden City All Stars founded, and kind of how it became what it ended up being. And yes, I used to battle game a lot. Actually, I have 4 master hoods. I was very good at wizard, healer, assassin was my first, and warrior. Those were my 4 primary classes. So
I want to thank Gorg for subscribing. Thank you, Gorg. I got one more question for you, Delos. So you're kind of like the godfather of spinning. Like you know, people think of spinning, they think of Delos. You know, where did that journey start for you?
I would say that, like most things with myself, it was a contest with Harry Arthon. I'll say Harry a lot. Sorry. And we both like to look pretty a lot, and you'll see it in the, most people have watched the video from way back in the day after SKBC1, which was one of the first fighting videos that was ever put out as an instructional. And if you watched us in the backyard fighting, that was really just a video of us having fun and fighting. There was no, he didn't give me any instructions on, we're going to do this or try to show this, or we're going to, there was none of that. It's just like, let's fight, let's have fun. The Heart of the Nation, my wife, she videoed it, Linda. She videoed it, and we're like, okay, we're just going to throw it down. We're going to have a good time. And that's like, there's so much joy in that. I don't know if it came through in the video or not, but there's just a lot of us having fun throwing down, and there's spins in there. There's all of that in there. And so my love of spinning was just a love of looking pretty while I was fighting. Like, you know, the things that I did in sports, I always found a way to be a bit of a showboat, I guess, in the process of still having like a bit, un poquito, senor, in the course, and still have a good, solid rooting in the fundamentals. So, you know, I think that's where it started from, and then I learned to throw different things, and you know, watch a lot of ESPN, learn to highlight real people. You know, those kind of videos came out, and it became more of a thing, and you know, it just evolved from there. And I've had a lot of fun with it over the years. It's been a thing.
Glenn says it's not just one of the first; it was the first. People would violence just to get a hold of one of those CDs. It was in demand. Isayama asks, Delos, what is your favorite topic to teach in fighting?
I that's a very interesting question. I love that question. I would say probably footwork, but that's like a loaded answer because it's just like the fundamental footwork and how to tie it into everything else. And then feints is right after that, because I feel like if you take footwork and feints and you teach, like people make the mistake of teaching feints too late, and they really should come earlier. And they teach footwork too late, and it really should come earlier. Like when someone comes to me very early in the game, and if I get them in their first 3 weeks, it's the best thing ever. Because they're like, what should I learn? And I'm like, well, first you should learn how to throw a shot properly. It's like this. And you should learn how to get hit. It's like this. It's not going to hurt you, I promise, unless someone's being an absolute jackass. And if they are, we'll handle it. Just let someone in an authority position know, and it'll be taken care of. Like, that'll be fine. Like, you'll get hit. Like, you'll be okay. Learn to get hit. That's going to happen a lot. Just learn to live with that. Be okay with it. Be at peace with it. You'll be fine. Learn to throw a shot. Okay. Now that we have that down, now learn to move. Because before anything else, you have to learn to have your feet in sync with everything above you. And if you learn to do that first, then I can start attaching all the pieces above the ground together. But too many people learn to do that last, and you have to unlearn so many things. Like, I've had to reteach so many things over the years that it's so much better if you get it early. So I would say footwork, but there's a lot of caveats to that. So yeah.
I want to share my favorite Delos story. So when I was relatively newer to the game, and I was still living in St. Louis, but that was kind of like what was called the third world of Amtgard at that time. There was this website called ESAM. It was like a forum, and I think it was on ESAM, and so I went down to a spring war, and somebody was drunk and throwing spin shots with two down spears in their hands. And so I thought it was dangerous. I started running my mouth, and Dalos chimes in and is like, well, I can spin shot on you with the down spear. And I was like, bet. And we ended up striking a wager. I don't remember the exact number. I think it was something outlandish, like 50 or something. I don't remember. And the bet was that Dalos couldn't spin on me with a down spear like 50 times at the Ditch and Banner Wars. And if he did, and if he landed 50 of them, it was 50 or 20, it was a high number. If he landed them, then I'd have to buy him a little 6-pack of Shiner Bock. And how was the Shiner Bock that I purchased?
Damn.
Yeah, that was a very long time ago because I don't even drink beer anymore. So that tells you how long ago that was. I had it for a very long time. It was delicious, though. Victory is always delicious.
It is.
Damn.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Fox, we're going to check in with you. How you doing?
Doing well.
Anything new since the last show?
Just got back from Winter War. Got second place in polearm. Got 8th in short red. I lost to Blademaster Surfane and polearm, and he and I go back and forth all the time. And then I lost to Blademaster Ragefire, and I beat him at Geddon, so it's fine for him to.
Yeah.
He ended up winning short red, so that's good with me.
You got to give him a chance, you know?
Exactly, yeah. No, Ragefire's my buddy. I actually became a squire for Belgarth.
Heck yeah.
Sweet.
I'm under Sir Braun of Sons of Terra, so that's gonna be a great journey for me. Lots of leather work, lots of sword and board. So I'm starting the board journey too.
So that's like an interesting like dynamic in a sense, which we kind of had a similar dynamic in the sense that I came to you initially. We were talking about me apprenticing under you for Blademaster, but I was already a warlord. But now you're now a Blademaster, squiring to somebody. What does that dynamic feel like to you? What's different about that?
So for me, I guess in my opinion, Braun was always someone who was so much better than I in everything growing up. Like me as a younger person in Belgarth and foam fighting, he was always like my inspiration. So he was always someone that I looked towards as someone who always was like, oh, this is a person I should follow and learn from and do whatever I can from him. He even was in a trial that I had in my one of my first units, and he destroyed me over and over and over again. And that really showed me like, wow, there's such a skill gap. Went to the military, he came back, showed back up even better than before. And he's also one of the best leather crafters in the entire sport. So I wanted a knight that I could vibe with, someone who could teach me a craft, and someone that was good at sword and board. Was like my three main qualities, and he checked every box. Awesome. So I pestered him for about a year, and then he said yes at Winter War.
Awesome. It's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
Let's talk coaching. I just clicked off of it. Our first agenda item is coaching for a group. And who wants to start us off? How do we talk about coaching for a group?
I guess one of the biggest thoughts about when you're talking to a group is the structure and the ability. Like, are you doing like a lecture? Are you doing a presentation? Are you doing a walkthrough? Are you doing some sort of demonstration? Or are you doing like things in pairs? And those are very big obstacles you have to figure out at first to then figure out how you can teach the group most effectively with whatever the topic is. And then from there, what is the most beneficial learning method of them? Because let's say we think about teaching someone single sword, and if it's an intermediate class, we could pair people up and have them do whatever you're trying to teach them. But if someone who's like day one, a lecture might be better just because you just kind of have to get through a bunch of information. But we'll go down later on about retention as well. But having that talk to a group can be very difficult, especially depending on your public speaking skills. Some background with me is I'm a park ranger. I talk to people all the time. I educate the public all the time, especially about environmentalism. So I have to be able to speak to a lot of people and make sure they understand what I'm trying to tell them and actually get the heart behind it as well.
Mhm.
And that's what some people who are newer at teaching people may not understand, is learning not necessarily the actual topic and information, but also the meaning behind it.
Mhm.
And that can be very difficult to show to a group.
Dalos, Horus, do you guys have any public speaking experience, or how do you find your vibe when you're coaching to a group?
Go ahead.
No, I'll go last. I'm fine. Go ahead.
Okay. That's good, because I actually don't think I'm very good at coaching. I really like this topic because
Okay.
I'm pretty bad at it. I've tried to teach a lot of people, and I feel like I've learned things over the years, but I don't think I'm very good at it. Public speaking, though, I actually do sort of just like love talking in front of people now. But I think that for public speaking, like it's really one, knowing what you want to say. It's a lot easier to talk about something when you mean it and you're speaking from a position where you actually want to tell people about it. And then also it's a lot of practice. Like once you kind of talk, you know, first you talk amongst your friends, and then you talk to people that you don't know, in 5 or 6, and then at a certain point, like more people just makes it easier, because it's like, what's the difference between talking to 20 people is almost a little bit scarier than talking to 600.
Mhm.
Like if you're standing in front of like a ton of people, like just what does it matter? Everybody's staring at you, but you're going to say what you're going to say or not. Like you just kind of do it. So
That makes
I
sense. Go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, that was kind of the end of my thought.
Fair enough. I'd agree with that. My background in terms of public speaking is I've been an entertainer for decades, and I was in bands, and I ran karaoke and stuff. So I one-on-one conversation, sometimes it gets a little awkward. I can speak in front of 1,000 people and feel comfortable doing it. And I think specifically coaching. I'm funny, but I got to rein that in a little bit. When you're coaching, when you're talking to somebody, you definitely want to be serious. You want to be authoritative. So, when you're coaching somebody, even if you're not necessarily confident in your own abilities, or if you're teaching something that it's like, I hope I do a good job. You want to come across as somebody that's knowledgeable. You want to impart that kind of authoritative speaking, because they're taking their cues from you. And if you sound like you're not really confident in what you're teaching, they're not going to receive it necessarily very confident either. I like to throw in some humor occasionally. Like I just said, be serious, but at the same time, spice in some jokes, occasionally, very occasionally, tactically, so that it breaks that tension. It makes that thing, it makes it fun. It makes it engaging. And then lastly, I like to try to get an audience participation as best I can. I can stand up there and talk for, an hour, and within 10 minutes people are going to be gone. If I start being like calling on people and asking them, like, okay, what do you think, or asking for questions, or everybody raise your hand if you've ever thrown this kind of shot, that engagement, because everybody has that little, like, kind of pick me inside of them, right, where it's just like, I hope that I'm noticed. And so, like, you can harness that and utilize that when you're teaching somebody, to try and get them, like, excited and wanting to kind of be noticed by the teacher. You use that to harness their attention and to get them paying attention to what you're saying, by distributing that attention during the during the teaching process. James, what's your call on that? How do you do it?
Yeah. So when teaching a group, and especially when tied to phone fighting, generally you're talking about groups of like 25 to 30, at least in my experience. It could be a little bit more. But my goal is to give people like 2 or 3 salient things that they can take home that are usable for them. That's generally the best you're going to do in the hour to an hour and a half time slot that you're given. And so whatever the topic is, you have to focus it in to find those 2 or 3 things for those 25 to 30 people that you have. And the way that I kind of do that is I start by asking questions in the beginning. So I get everyone to introduce themselves, and I ask them, what are you hoping to learn from this class? Just really quickly, like, what are the things you're looking for? And generally, and I say, don't give generic answers. Like, I want to get better at shield. Well, No, like what specifically are you hoping to learn? And a lot of times, like it's stuff that I'd already planned on covering, but sometimes it's not. Like I really wanted to learn how to throw this specific feint. Okay, well, I have that in my catalog of things that I know how to teach. So I can definitely build it into the things that I'm going to do to make sure that they can get that. And by the way, the person 3 people down from them also would benefit from that. They just didn't know to ask that question. So as you go through the people and get the things that they wanted to learn, you can hit everyone's like 1 to 3 things that they needed. So definitely asking that question at the beginning of the class is very helpful to make sure that people get something that they can take home and use. It's a trick that I've used every SKBC since maybe the 5th or 6th one that I've taught. So for a very long time now, and I find it to be very useful. The other thing is people will pay attention to you talking for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then they need to do something. So I always have them like work with each other, demonstrate, like answer a lot of questions, give feedback. If you're up there lecturing for 30 or 45 minutes, you've lost them. I promise you that's true. I know you think you're a genius and you're amazing. I absolutely know that I think I'm amazing and the best speaker of all times, but people just don't have that kind of attention span. They need to do things. They need to try the things you're telling them. They need to hit things. So I try to get it to 15, 20 minutes and then like, okay, let's work on that with the partner. Try it for 10, 15 minutes. Okay, now let's bring it back in. Now discuss and then I walk around and work with them and we discuss the problems that they were having. Like, what did you discover? What are you having? What issues are you having with? And if you're partnered with someone, you know, your partner and you walk around and discuss with them while they're working with each other, and then discuss as a group, what problems were you seeing? This person was having these problems. Oh, I also was experiencing that problem. And there's a lot of interactivity and a lot of feedback and a lot of give and take. And if you have that, then people, I think, are a lot more engaged in the learning process. And you really need engagement for people to learn, because if it's all one way, then their learning is going to be a lot more limited. I think that's the best advice that I give to people who are trying to take coaching, is to make sure there's a lot of engagement and a lot of two-way street.
Fox, what's your take on learning styles? Just in a general sense, how do you approach people that maybe have different needs?
So, like from a professional standpoint, there's a lot of different ways that people can learn, and knowing how your general class, I'm just going to call it your class, your group, can learn from is what's most important. There are some people, especially in Belgarth and Amtgard, where they need to be taught by something physical, so sparring or coaching, or in that sense, something that is taught to them verbally, visually, like using their senses, auditorium, have them touch, feel, listen, hear, demonstration, you do something. And then sometimes it's also a sort of learn from mistakes. So like what Dalos was saying, like having people do an object together and see them do the thing wrong. And not necessarily be like, oh, class, person A and person B are doing something wrong, but so that the person can realize that, oh, this didn't work. But they have that support system of the teacher. Be like, well, this is how it's meant to be done. I'm seeing you do it in a different way, but now we can learn it from there.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So if you think about it as a standard classroom, you could think of it as touch, feel, or hearing, visual, or even to, in a sense, digesting, having it sit for a bit. We don't always get that opportunity where we only see each other every couple of months. We don't have the opportunity for the last one. For most people, ends up being that actual doing, like what Dalos said, like having that talk, do, the recap.
Makes sense. I'd like to hone in on something that that you said about them doing something wrong and honing in on that. And I'll tell an example here, or show a story about why it's important to do physical things, I think, in group environments. I taught Middle Medu at last SKBC, and there was these, I love California Corsairs. They're awesome people. And I had a little class full of California Corsairs, and of course I'm teaching Middle Medu. For all the Bell folks out there, this is a shield that has little daggers sticking out of the top and bottom of it, and you can stab with it. And I said, okay, what do you want to do? And they, well, of course everybody said, I want to stab people in the ribs. I want to hear the noise. And what I was trying to explain to him is like Middle Medu is not about stabbing people in the ribs. That's a bonus that you get sometimes, but it's about the threat of stabbing people in the ribs and killing them with other things. That's what it's really about. And so I was trying to explain this in my class, and I just they were gone. They were just like, oh, okay, sure, whatever. And so I pulled somebody aside. I said, all right, grab your sword and board. I'm going to grab my sword and Medu. Let's first to 10. We first to 10. And then after the first to 10, I said, okay, how many times did I kill you? And he said, you killed me 9 times. I said, how many times you killed me? He said, I killed you once. I said, how many times did I stab you with my Medu? And his face went like blue screen, and he's like, not a single time. I was like, yeah, I know, right? But I definitely scared you with it, didn't I? And then it was like, then I had him. And then they followed along, and they were with me. And we did end up learning how to do the stabs and stuff like that. But that moment of showing rather than telling was what really brought them into the idea that, okay, I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And then they can benefit to listen to me, Dalos, what are your thoughts about learning styles?
Learning styles it's an interesting question because I think it's one we're going to talk about later. And so this one's more in a group context for learning styles. Yeah. In a group context, it's hard to deal with because you have so many disparate personalities all at once. And so I think it's important as you break them out into tinier subsections. And I think that it is important to do that, like partner them up, have them work for 10 or 15 minutes, and then engage with them in the smaller groups while they're doing that, because some of them won't talk in front of the whole group very much, but they will talk in front of 3 people a lot. And you can help them in that smaller subsection, and trying to get them to come out and talk in front of the whole group in an hour and a half, unrealistic. Not going to happen. Not that it shouldn't happen in the long run, but you're not going to get it done in an hour and a half. So your job is to help them in that 1.5 hour period of time. So, find them in that period of time. Other people, they'll talk for as long as you'll let them in front of the group, and you have to cut them off. You know what I mean? And they're happy to say tons of things in front of the group, and you have to cut them off, right? So you just have to find the people where they are in the group, and give them the opportunities to say their piece, and teach them the things that they need to learn, because everyone learns better when they feel like they've gotten to have their say and that they're heard. And I think that's the most important thing. Like, and that's what it goes back to that question. Like, this instructor wants to hear me, number one, and number two, they want to continue to hear me throughout the entire class and continue to deliver to the problems that I have. Not this instructor wants to say their things at me and I just have to engage with them. But to the learning styles, some are going to be more timid, some are going to be more out there. I think that you can be harder on some of them and softer on some of them. In 1.5 hours, that's harder to figure out, I think. But I think in the 1.5 hours, you can find the ones that are more willing to be out front and the ones you need to engage in the smaller section. I think that's about the best you can do in that period of time.
Horus, anything to add on learning styles in a group setting?
I tend to think that really it's I don't really like the concept of learning styles. Like, I feel like people learn best not when they do something a certain way necessarily, but when they're motivated to do so. I actually really liked what you said earlier, Delos, about asking people why they're at the class. Because something that I have learned is that I would try to show somebody something, and I would realize that it was unsuccessful for whatever reason. And slowly over time, when people would ask me to do stuff, I would ask them what are you trying to accomplish by me teaching this to you? It's really easy when you're a brand new fighter and you're swinging the sword at me and you don't know how to swing the sword. I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me show you how to swing the sword. I know you want to swing the sword. You're swinging it at me. But beyond that, like what do you actually want to know? Because if I know your motivations, it's a lot easier to know like what kind of pressure I can put on you or what I can do to help. And then I think that when you're showing people certain things, you can talk about them and they can like grasp them, or you can ask them questions. Like if you want to like have somebody learn something or come to a conclusion, I find it's better to like ask people questions and kind of like lead them there. But if you want somebody to learn how to swing a sword, then I'm going to show you and then I'm going to make you do it over and over and over again. And after you've done it 20, 30 times, then you're going to start grasping it. It's like, it's not really going to stick if I tell you how to throw a reverse wrap. That's like, that was really hard for me when I started. The Belagarth, the weapons are a little heavier. It's like a very unnatural kind of motion. And I would try to show people how to throw a reverse wrap, and I've gotten like way better at it over time. And it's like, you just have to make them do it. Like you have to sit there and make them do it over and over again and do pieces of it until they get that piece down, and then this piece, and then this piece until they can like do the whole thing.
Specifically, remember you saying you're not good at coaching, but I'm hearing this and I'm like, I feel like that might be bullshit. I don't know.
Maybe.
Oops. Here we are. Agenda. Let's talk about coaching an individual. How that's different than coaching for a group. You know, what things we need to do separately. You know, or what things we need to do differently when coaching for a group when it's just an individual. Who wants to take us off?
I'll actually start. I really like teaching individual people more than groups. I don't think it's bad to teach in groups, but I just find that it's like I'm better able to impart knowledge if I do it individually. And really, when I'm teaching in a group, I'm sort of like still doing it on an individual level. Like when I'm breaking people up into doing different things, like then I'm just teaching like one or two people at a time, which is two people isn't that much different than one. But I think for an individual, like again, once you kind of know somebody's motivation and you can like ask them questions, and kind of get a feel for like what they're like, kind of what they respond to, you can better like tailor what you're doing to help them. Like something that, you know, in where I'm from in Champaign, they would pretty much always teach everybody the same way. And it was like tough love. Like they would be really nice to you and they would just hit you really hard. And some people respond really well to that. That's how I learned to move my legs and not stand there and get hit in the legs, is that these big dudes would just come and make my legs black and blue until I moved them. And some people just need that. Like they want like everybody is going to do really well if you stimulus, feedback, stimulus, feedback, stimulus, feedback, and that's easier to do with an individual. What kind of stimulus actually produces the result that's gonna change. Like some people don't want to be beat up, and some people live for that. Like they're masochists. That's what they want to do. And if you do it that way, where they're like feeling it, it'll really help. Other people like to kind of be a little bit more thoughtful, but I find that that's the best thing about the individual, is that you can just like have them do the thing and then instantly give them feedback really, really fast.
Dalos, looked like you wanted to jump in at the beginning. What do you have about teaching an individual?
Oh, I have tons about teaching individuals. I have coached. We have a lot of chosen warlords. You can look through our books. I forget what the count is. It's close to 30, and I've helped quite a few of them. I have 2 squires that are warlords, so I helped both of them. The dojo is chocked full of not only warlords, but people's top 5 fighter lists are people that were in the dojo. If you don't know what the dojo was, it's a group of fighters that I put together that worked together and trained with me. It was very collaborative. I wouldn't use the term under me because I don't really like that term. even as a coach, I tell my players that it's a collaboration. Yes, I drive the car, but we're all parts of the car and we have to move forward and work together. But Anatole, Shion, Spongy, Lily,
I guess my
Morpheus.
question would be, how do you get them there? Like, how do you take these folks and bring them down that path? What's your strategy with individuals?
Yeah. So I was getting to it. I had to do a little bit of name throwing so we could, because those names matter, right?
Yeah.
And so how you work with those different people is very different. Like how Anatole and I engaged was very different than how Morpheus and I engaged, and how Sponge and I engaged was very different than how Lily and I engaged. And how Pork Chop and I engage is very different. Like they all needed different kinds of coaching and different kinds of collaboration when I worked with them. Like some people need the I'm going to bark at you kind of coaching, and you're horrible at this and you're absolutely terrible. This is garbage. Like you have to fix this. This is the worst I've ever seen in my entire life. And some people thrive under that kind of scenario and will get better. And some people just absolutely crumble and fold under that kind of scenario, and they'll never grow and they'll never thrive. And I mean, I'll give an example. It's not fun fighting. It's in my own coaching that just happened like in the last week or two, my own realization, like my own players. I have a lot of 10th graders this year. Last year I had almost all seniors. And we've been struggling a bit with fumbling the ball and making mistakes in games. And I'm been pretty vocal with them, like, get on the ball, do what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, these kids are 2 years younger than the kids that I'm used to coaching. And my language needs to change a bit and my tone needs to come down a bit because they're not as mature as the kids that I had last year. Mm-hmm. And so my own self-realization as a coach is like, I have to bring even my tone down with them for them to be successful. Because if I continue down this track, that's not their fault. I'm coaching them entirely the wrong way. Mm-hmm. Like they're going to continue to be nervous. They're going to continue to make mistakes. And that's me. I'm not coaching them correctly. And not only did I make that adjustment, I told them I was making that adjustment. Most coaches wouldn't, but I told them, look, I'm coaching y'all the wrong way. Like I absolutely did this incorrectly. You guys aren't a bunch of seniors, you're a bunch of 10th graders. And so we've been going about this. I said, we have been going about this the wrong way. And I told the seniors that I had and the 11th graders that I had, I said, I want us to all change our tone with them. And I want us to bring this down. Right. And that's what I mean. Like individually, you have to know who you're engaging with and what kind of coaching they need. And I don't think Lily would mind me using him. Lily loves the like, you suck, you're terrible, get better, and like hammer it into him.
Yeah.
He thrives with that kind of coaching. He really does. Now don't ever hammer on him just because I said that. And likely he'll tear you up for it anyway. It's probably not a good idea. He's very good these days. But he thrived under that kind of scenario. And I would even really give it to him that much. I gave it to him some, but he really did do well with that kind of coaching. And it's not really my favorite style anyway. It's just not in my personality to coach that way, but he did very well with that kind of coaching. And other people didn't. So I think every individual is different, and understanding that as a coach is a lot of becoming a very good coach, is adjusting to what the person needs and giving them the right coaching for them so that they can grow.
Fox, what's your thoughts on that? Or your thoughts on coaching an individual?
So another thing to add that I like to do is milestones.
Okay.
But also, I know that Dalos and I were talking about this before, but also like giving them a simple task and having them perfect it.
Okay.
The idea of like 1,000 cuts equals masterful skill kind of thing. Like Dalos' example is like, oh, have his buddy only move right. Mm-hmm. I forget the name of your friend. But that was such a good example of like
Noah.
It was Noah. Okay.
Yeah. Megiddo.
I've given fighters who were mostly for Red Sword who come to me like, hey, keep both hands on your sword and just throw diagonal. Mm-hmm. Just something really basic. You can't hurt anyone. You're going to throw a shot, take a step back. Throw a shot, take a step back. Throw 2 shots, take a step back. And that kind of slow growth, that kind of like slow rise can be very important to keep their foundation strong. And like we were saying before about how people don't have the other foundations when they're more experienced in the sport, like feints or footwork. Being able to be that professor, that teacher, to be like, hey, let's slow down. Let's look at your foundation so we can build a stronger house. And then you can get to the roof and shout your name from the top of the roof, either by Warlord, Blademaster, Knighthood, winning tournaments, whatever. You can't get up there until you have your foundation.
Sorvana, I want to thank you for gifting a sub. I really appreciate it. That helps us out a lot.
Thank you, dude.
One love Savannah. Way to go.
But that's my other addition to it. And then milestones too is like it took me a year to take a min red or short red to go out in the line battle and kill someone and not die. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm awful because I didn't have an instruction. But now I can, in the position now that I could teach people that is a good thing to be able to go out and learn from your mistakes and show that you may not always get your goal, but learning from your goal is better than reaching the goal.
That makes sense.
I would like to add to this topic, particularly because I think this next piece may be the most important thing I say tonight. And so I really want to stress this because this is hugely important. People need to be realistic with the goals and the time that they have. And why I say that is because it's so important to their mental health. So whatever goal they have, like I want to beat whoever it is at the top of the mountain. I'm not going to say a name, but whoever it is, like I want to beat that person, but I can only invest an hour a week. Completely unrealistic, not going to happen. Like, and you set yourself up for failure. Even like I want to place in a tournament, in the next tournament, and I can invest an hour every 2 weeks. Also not going to happen. And then tournament time comes and you're going to fail because you aren't going to invest enough time. And you're going to be like, I'm an abject failure because I didn't meet my goal. Well, your goal was unrealistic. The time that you were willing to invest was never going to reach that goal. And now all you've done is harm yourself mentally because you did not set realistic goals for the time you were going to invest. And so the first question I ask someone is 2 questions. What's your goal? And what time are you willing to invest to meet that goal? And so when they tell me their goal and they tell me that time, I'm like, okay, that time either is enough to meet that goal or that time is unrealistic for that goal. So either A, you need to increase that time, or B, you need to bring the goal back down to what's realistic for that time frame. Because I'm more worried about your mental health than I'm worried about you meeting that goal. Your mental health is way more important to me than that goal. Because I'm not going to help you do some kind of harm to yourself trying to meet a goal in some time frame that's unrealistic. And that's something I've learned over the course of years that I think most people that teach people in this game, they're like, oh, you just have to train harder. Oh, you're just not grinding hard enough. And that's so not the message that we should be giving people, because people have lives and people have responsibilities and people have obligations. And whatever time they're willing to commit, figure out the right way to optimize and maximize that time, and then help them set realistic goals for that time. And then, hey, we can do that goal that you have. It's going to take 2 years instead of 1. Realistically, I'm going to work with you. It's going to take 2 years instead of 1. But bet we can get there. But let's not be unrealistic. Let's not harm ourselves mentally. But I will help you get there. But let's take our time and let's be real. And that, I think, is so important. Maybe the most, like I said, maybe the most important thing I'll say all night.
Because then when you tell somebody it is a realistic goal, they will believe it. Because it's accurate. You're not telling, you've shown them unrealistic. Oh, I lost everybody. Come back to me, my friends. All right. Stand by. Got to put Fox here. Got to put Horus here. And got to put James here. Wait, nope, James goes there. And Fox goes.
Too much wisdom. Blew up the stream.
Blew up the stream. Happens at least once a day. Once a stream. We got to get going on the next agenda item, but I got one thing to add to this. While y'all were speaking, came up with my 5-part process for how I teach people individually, and that is consent, show, explain, show, practice. And so what that means is first is consent, because back in the day when I was a wee lad, and when Dalos was a young man, and y'all weren't born yet, it used to be that everybody guarded their shit and didn't. Nobody would teach anything. It was kind of like they kept shit to themselves, and like that was a part of the culture. I think at least some of the experiences that I had is that people wanted to, people didn't really, they wanted to be the badass, and so they didn't explain anything to anybody. And so a lot of people that were around in the old school like myself, we have to remember that just me info dumping wisdom on somebody might not be wanted, and that's not me necessarily doing them a favor. Consent is number one. Nobody's going to learn shit from you if you don't ask them if they're ready to learn it first. So if you see somebody throwing a bad shot, if you see somebody that obviously needs help, instead of saying no, you walk up to them and you say, can I show you something? And you achieve that consent from them. Not only is it a good practice, consent's very important in life. Not only is it good practice, but it's going to prime them to open their mind. It's now not you showing them something. It's by saying yes, in a sense, they've asked for it. So they're going to engage in it. Go ahead. You were saying?
No, I said puppy.
Puppy.
It's not a dog.
The second, so the second part of that is consent and then show. So then I'll show them. I'll be like, hey, here's a shot that you might want to think about, right? And I show them the thing, okay? That way they have a visual idea of what I'm going to be teaching them. And then I explain it. I explain the process to them. Okay, this is what we're doing. You do this, and you do this thing. We're apparently learning about high crosses, but you do this thing and you rotate here and you kind of put your feet into it, right? And then, now that I've explained it to them, then I show them again and show them, so this is what it looks like. And I've now explained it so they can watch it one more time, but with that knowledge in the back of their head. They know what they're watching now. And then the fifth part is it's their turn. It's time to practice. Now I want to see you do it. And then they do it. I correct them, and they just practice it. You can't show somebody something. You can't teach them something and then have them do it one time. And then it's like, all right, we walk away. Let's practice it. Let's do it. Let's do it over and over again. Grab another person, another new person that has no idea what's going on, mush them together and say, now do that thing. Do that thing that I just showed you to them, and let's see it work. So there's a level of success to it. Moving on. Meeting them where they are, which is, subtopics here: understanding goals, understanding assets, and motivation. How do we meet them where they are?
This is why I'm always a big fan of asking questions of people.
Mm-hmm.
I'll use as an example actually what Dalos was talking about earlier. I thought setting realistic goals is fantastic, because a lot of times you'll ask somebody like, oh, like, what's your goal? And they'll be like, I want to be the best sword fighter ever. And you're like, cool, okay. So like, when do you think that that's going to happen by? And they'll be like, next year. And I'll be like, so do you think that you're going to get the knowledge of all of the people who've been sword fighting? You're going to learn all that, and then you're going to add on top of it to the point that you're beating everyone in the next year. And they're like, well, when you put it that way, it doesn't sound very realistic. And you're like, cool. Like, glad we're on the same page. So finding some kind of like consensus to where you agree on something, I think is a good way to meet people where they're at, especially if like when they come to you and they're asking for help, like, you probably can just start talking to them, but that's not always the best way, because they still might not get what you're having to say. So I find it's better to just like find what they do understand and then try to build up from there. And then I like actually another thing that you said earlier, Talos, like I like to like build on top of it and then see, like, just keep talking until like I see their eyes glazing over or they're getting confused, and I'm like, then I'll dial it back to like, what are the things that I really want to get through? Like 2 or 3 at most, usually 1, because like I just find that people don't pick up a lot of stuff unless they're pretty far down their journey and like they're picking up a lot consciously, or they're looking for something specific. Try to focus on like one thing that I really want to teach them, but I start from, here's where we are on the same page, you know what I'm talking about, and then I'm going to build on top of that.
Dalos, Fox, how do we meet them where they are?
It's so like individually aspected. Like you don't know if someone is X rank at this thing or this good or that thing, and it's hard for me to really determine that without either A, knowing them very well, B, fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
So I just like will spar them for a bit and see like, if it's something where it's like I've seen them in the fight or the line battles or sparring them before that, oh, they're really weak to this situation. I'll just throw that a bunch. Maybe they're weak to legs. Throw a bunch of legs and see if they will start to realize that that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of learn through practice. Now, if it's a situation where I'm getting booty blasted and like, oh, they're just beating me, like maybe I'll learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing when is it time to learn and when is it time to teach is also very important for someone who is a teacher.
Makes sense. Dalos, what are your thoughts?
Like after you understand what their goals are, like we talked about, and the time that they have, I think fighting them is obviously important. And then I think then you can start laying out practice plans based on what they can and can't do. And I think that...
Oh, damn it. Damn it. Why is it like this? There we go. All right, welcome back. Here we go. Stand by. And then the fun part is that it shuffles you guys.
Yeah.
It shuffles you. So now I have to like redistribute. Okay, we're back. I'm getting really fast at this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, you know, once you find out their skill set and where they need help, then I think giving them bite-sized pieces of information and things that they can digest and that they can work on.
Mm-hmm.
And then letting them work on them is important. And this is people that you're going to see again. My assumption here is that you're going to see them on a weekly basis, or at least every couple of weeks at a fighter practice. If you're going to see them every month or every 2 months, the approach is different. If you're going to see them once a year, the approach is very different. You know, it really just depends on the frequency of your interaction with them. But generally, if I'm going to engage with an individual, I'm going to see them usually once a week or multiple times a week to help them get better. So,
to me, meeting somebody where they are, there's a couple of things that really like, you know, that really helps with that. You know, like it's every stick jock's immediate reaction when, you know, when somebody's like new and they're like, well, I want to get good with a staff, you know, or, you know, that kind of thing. And you're just like, no, you know, but that's where they are. They're new to this game. Help them. Show them how to get good with the staff. I mean, show them how to get better with the staff, I guess I should say. You know, but like that's okay. That's where they are. A lot of they might not be interested in being a warlord or like a warlord level fighter. They just might want to hit people with a staff. And so if that's where we're going to meet them, you know, if that's where they want to be, then that's where we should meet them.
we let someone fight in the dojo one time with a mostly legal staff.
Street legal.
Yeah, I mean, it was foam padded all the way through the length, and I'm like, this guy's not gonna hurt anyone with that thing. So, you know, we let him fight with it. It was fine. You know, he trained there, and the thing was padded enough. I'm like, he's like, I'm sure I'm gonna do great. I'm like, I'm sure you're gonna do great too. Line up. You know, it wasn't a problem for us. Like, we had no issue with it, and he quickly decided that perhaps it wasn't as glorious as he thought it was. And I'm like, yeah, because because it's not as good against swords and boards as you think it is. Like, and we've been doing this for a very long time, my dude. Like, this was the wrong audience for you to try this in. But I can help you do the other things if you'd like. You know what I mean? But yeah, I didn't dissuade him. I'm like, sure, man, have at. If you want some pointers, I could kind of help you. Like, I would grab it at this end and start whacking people with it.
Brazen, thank you so much for the 15 subs, man. You are the homie. I really appreciate it.
Big thanks.
Yeah, way to go, Brazen. One love.
I ADD'd a little bit. Did I skip anybody on meeting them where they're at? Did I get everybody? Fox, did I skip you?
No, we all talked.
We all talked. Okay, all right. Let's talk about. Let's talk. We got sub bullets here: understanding goals, understanding assets, and motivation. I feel like we talked about understanding goals, assets, and motivation. We touched on that a little bit in terms of like the staff stuff. Assets, I think, is another big thing. You can't teach somebody really in-depth footwork stuff, or you have to modify it if they have like really bad knees and they're just not capable necessarily of engaging in some of that footwork. If you're a relatively shorter person and you're trying to teach somebody that's tall, that there might be some, we could probably do it. We've the people on right here have been doing this long enough that I could teach a tall person how to fight. But it's like it to the average person that might not be something they're experienced with. Same thing with, especially I do see this a lot, where a really tall fighter will start trying to explain to somebody that's like 5'6", like, well, this is what I do. I just, I'm throwing shots and taking attacks of opportunity as they're closing. And the person with a lot shorter wingspan is like, okay, what do I do though? I'm the one getting hit in that situation. So like, I think understanding their assets is also like, what do they have to work with? What can they capitalize on? What's somebody jump in? What's your thoughts on that?
So I like to think of it as like the anime special. What can you do better than anyone else? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I tell people who are like maybe in the sport for a couple years. And I'm like, what makes you think that you're different? What can you do better? You're really good at hip wraps. You're really good at moving around people. Maybe you're really good at throwing high crosses. Maybe something like that. And I try to work on their best thing. Make it their own. Make it their anime move. Make them throw the deepest high cross in the universe. And make them feel hype about that. And you're like, wow, I learned this cool move. I'm like, put a dumb name on it. Remember it. People remember it. And they're like, what's next? I'm like, make another anime move. And for me, that helps people, no matter their personal ability and their skill, their height, their weight, whatever, they can have something that they can connect to, and that they could focus on training that one thing and be able to throw that better or do that better or find the better situation. And then from there, once they have that one or two cool moves, they could be like, oh, wait, footwork or all those broad things. Mm-hmm. That's like generally good for everyone. But like, I'm short. I'm 5'5". One of my best friends is like 6'7", and we fight each other all the time. And it's like fighting a giant, and he's just like, little peons, let me fight you. And I like him. And I'm like, cool, now you're my height. And he's learned how to not get legged, and I've learned not to hit in the shoulders. And it ends up being kind of a good thing that we can teach each other, so we can teach other people who are different heights as well.
Sense. Dalos, thoughts?
Yeah. First of all, I would never name shots. That seems ridiculous.
No, not at
all. One of the things that we ask in combat architecture classes that we've taught, that I've taught, is what's your favorite shot? Building on what Fox says, what's your favorite shot? What's your strongest shot? And have them show what that is. And then you build a game off that. That's something I learned from jiu-jitsu when I took jiu-jitsu, because I had like a good collar sweep, right? And so then I built a whole game off of just that would end up in an arm bar. Well, if you have a good high cross, I can turn that into a hip, turn that into a 5-1-2, turn that into a board side shoulder, right? Like all those things can start from a high cross if you know the building blocks to get there. And so I just need to know what your first strong shot is, and then I can show you the next pieces to add on to that. And so, understanding their assets, watching their footwork as they throw that strong shot can lead me, and by extension them, down a path that will teach them to put the next thing and the next thing and the next thing in place. So I think that is probably the asset thing for me.
What do you think, Horus?
I think that's a really good way to do it. I tend to try to teach people the thing that they kind of need the most. So like, it's easier, when people have something that's significant, but a lot of times I find that I'm teaching people who end up being smaller or just don't have a lot going for them besides the fact that they're kind of hard to hit behind their shield because they are just smaller. So I wouldn't say I take the opposite approach, but I try to show people that like they usually have more assets than they think that they do. Like it's not particularly hard to actually swing really hard. You don't need to take your arm and like do this, right? Like all it is a step and just like kind of everything moving forward into it. So I try to show people that like what they have is probably enough to do what they want to do, and then if they want to do something that is maybe beyond that, like the steps that they want to take to get there.
Makes sense. Let's talk about crafting a plan. So if we're crafting a plan, let's say, so this is more of an extended coaching session. This might be for a squire. This might be for, somebody that goes to your home park, somebody that you are around for a significant amount of time. What does crafting a plan look like?
Something I kind of realized in myself from just speaking to people for like therapy reasons is something that will it affect you in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years. And if you can internalize something in that kind of sense, you could relate it to anything as well. I might not use 5, maybe just like if you practice something, like let's say we're just working on a high cross. If you practice 3 times a week for a couple hours each, and you focus every practice, like my goal is to get really good at high crosses, so I'm going to throw them a lot. You're going to throw them a lot, but are you going to get better at them? So then it turns into also not only how, but when. So I like to teach people in a sense that, hey, you can do better, but not only is it you can, but when you can. Going on with what Dalos is saying about mental health, there needs to be a timeline that is appropriate, but there also needs to be a skill set that is taught at the same time. So for me, when I teach someone who really wants to learn from me for a long time, I will almost give them a guideline and be like, hey, I'm going to teach you these 15 things. It's going to take as long as it takes. You can put a time period if you want, but I'm not going to put one because it's bad. And we're going to go through it piece by piece. And if something you're really excited on, maybe we'll skip it. But to give them an idea of an expectation of we're going to work on these things. And then we're going to do it on your time to make it healthy for you. But I'm going to put a little bit of push to make sure it gets competitive. That you're not just lagging. You're not just sitting in your butt doing nothing. That's what something I did with Ash, who's my newest apprentice. And he's doing incredibly well with that kind of teaching method.
I think that's a good point about having a push in there. I like to set check-ins. And and then on these check-ins and let's check in where we at with all this and try to have notes from the last time we talked so that there's a level almost that again this depends on the person. There can almost be a little undercurrent of shame if they haven't if they've had the ability to work on some of this stuff and they just haven't. And so avoiding that shame if they know a check-in is coming and avoiding that feeling of like, I didn't do anything, sorry. Trying to avoid that, like, I disappointed teacher moments, can be a tool to motivate somebody to just continue working, just at least a little better every day. And that's not to say like in these check-ins I'm like, wow, you're a fucking failure, buddy. Not like that, but just like, just letting them create that own pressure, whatever it might be in themselves to keep things going. And just because as a teacher, I think outside of those scenarios that Dalos was talking about where people thrive under that pressure, I think usually as a teacher, you need to be respectful and need to be encouraging more than anything, for a lot of times. And so that's why, I think a check-in is a good motivator to have people put that pressure on themselves to continue working. What are y'all's thoughts on coming up with a plan? Dalos or Horus, jump in.
I think that a lot of times when people don't have a great self-motivation and that they come to you and like they might want they want to know what they have to do, or they have a goal in mind, and especially over a long term they kind of like think that you're gonna just get them there by like talking to them, maybe even talk once a week. And I personally think that if you have a goal, you should like work backwards and forwards to write down the steps of how you're going to get to that goal and set deadlines for yourself that you're going to keep for yourself. So if I want to, make a sword, then that's probably something that can be done in a day. But say I actually only had 5 minutes every day to make a sword for some reason, and I wanted to make a sword in 7 days. Well, if I don't know how to do all these things, I have 5 minutes to actually do it, right? But I only have I have an hour that I could listen to somebody talking about it or whatever. Like I wouldn't try to like cram it all into the last 5 minutes on the last day to do all the things and then 5 minutes researching or whatever. I would do a piece of it every day. And I think that when you make your plan, like that's kind of in my mind what you do is you try to get them to have those check-ins, but you like try to be at a certain point and like make yourself accountable to those points so that you're constantly like working towards that goal over time. Because even if they are waiting until right before the check-in to do something, at least they're like then every once in a while actually working on a thing instead of say I want armor at the end of the year. I'm not just going to try to work on the whole set of armor at the end of the year. If I say I'm going to have a bracer done this month, I'm going to have a bracer done this month. Even if you only worked on it 1 day a month, like you'd actually have some of your armor built over time, and you'd start learning those skills and pushing yourself to do them. So that's kind of how I think of
I'd like to
constructing.
touch on something you said at the beginning of this. Everyone lies to themselves, to you. Everyone lies. And one of the things that I noticed when I first got my Warlord is everybody jumped in my DMs, just like a deluge of people saying, all right, you got to get me there. I want to get there. I want to learn how to do it. And, and so there's only so much of you as a person that goes around. There's only so much of you that can invest in people. And I think part of being a teacher and a coach is, understanding that it doesn't matter how much enthusiasm somebody comes to you with. There's a very good chance that they are lying, not just to you, but to themselves. And, start them on their path, get them going, but hold back really investing in them until you see them putting in the effort. They should be putting in more effort than you are. If you're putting in the effort, you're not coaching them, you're trying to carry them, and that's not going to work. And that's okay. And that's not a fit, so, what that really comes down to is your own mental health as a coach. If you're supposed to be teaching somebody and they're not getting better, that's not necessarily your failure as a teacher. It could be they don't have the desire to actually put in the work, and that's not on you. Save that, the real investment, the real, I'm really giving this person everything I got. Save that for the people that show you that they're earning it. I think that's important. Dalos, what do you think about coming up with a plan?
First of all, I 100% agree with that mental health piece. Like telling them to take care of their mental health was definitely guarding my own mental health through that process. I learned that over the years, like because I'm had a mandate of sorts, I guess, from my pops to like look out for people and help them become better versions of themselves. It's definitely something I take seriously, especially since he passed. So that's definitely a desire of mine. I'm always down to help people, but they have to be actually serious about wanting to get there. And that's what all those questions and understanding where they're at and how much time they're willing to invest came from. Because not only did I want them not to hurt themselves, I wasn't going to allow them to waste my time or to hurt me in any way, shape, or form, because I don't have a ton of time. I have a son. I coach a basketball team, so I have by extension 13 additional sons, you know, and I have a wife. I have all kinds of obligations and responsibilities, so my time is very precious. But to answer the question, coming up with a plan, a lot of times I won't share it with them, unlike what's been said here, because you have people that jump ahead when they shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes to knowing them and their personalities, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes people need that whole big picture and they want to see it, and it's like, here's your big plan, don't jump ahead, stay with me, we'll get there. And they see the whole thing. I'm like, oh, okay, I see my path, I'm good, but I'm going to stay right where I need to. Coach, I'm with you. And there's some people who can't help themselves, and they'll go to step 16 before they've done steps 1 through 15, and they're nowhere near ready for step 16, but they're like, oh, but step 16 is so cool, I want to do the one love spin, I'm ready, and they're nowhere near ready. You know what I'm saying? So you can't show them the whole thing. You have to keep it close. And so it just depends. But my plan is always this: don't die first. Don't die first is always the beginning of the plan. And so how do I teach them how to be more defensive than what they are when I get them, and to implement the strengths of their game in a more defensive fashion? Because in our game, it's very easy to die. And so implementing your strengths without dying is very important. And so what footwork do they need? What shot selection do they need? What openers do they need? Like whatever it is that they need, I start building it into their plan right away to strengthen the don't die first scenario, because I don't even like side-milling. Like, that's stupid. Why should I do that? Like, we need to not die at all.
Mhm.
And once you learn to not die as often, then boom, we start putting in more pieces and more pieces. So I think that understanding the don't die part is part one, and we build from that. And generally it's footwork first. It always should be, by the way.
Mhm.
There are some very extraordinary circumstances where it wouldn't be footwork first, but I would say 99% of the time it's footwork first. Footwork almost always needs to be fixed. It always needs to be better. Like, they don't step properly, they don't move properly. And footwork's not this crazy thing. It's usually pretty simple, but it does need to be fixed. It does need to be addressed. So we start there, and then we build out, and we start adding shots, we start adding feints, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But and we go from there. But that's generally my approach to the plan. Don't die first, and then we build out.
Makes sense.
I just want to chime in and say I absolutely love that. Like, people will be like, oh, I got that guy, and I'm like, well, you like ran and suicided. Like, anybody can pretty much do that. Like, if they just have the right opportunity. Like, when I fight and I'm practicing, if I get hit, I feel like I lost. It doesn't even matter if I won the fight or whatever. I only lost my arm. Like, if you're field fighting, you lose your arm, you're like completely ineffective now. Like, that's not really winning. If you want to be good, you should fight to not lose and not die.
Yeah, not get hit at all. Like, my whole style was probably built on the fact that, especially in the Austin area, when I was really, really training hard, our swords were basically like table legs.
Mhm.
It was like getting hit with the table leg. So I had no desire for anything to touch me at all. And
Yeah.
so that's where I learned to just not get hit. That's like, okay, I don't want you guys to touch me with anything, so I'm going to make sure that that does not happen. And you know, we were friends, but I wouldn't say we were friendly with each other when we fought. You know, that's just the way it was, like back in those days. And so we threw down. And so I had to learn to not get hit. And so when you watch me fight and where my style comes from, it's that don't get hit first. And
Yeah.
and that's where that all stemmed from. Like those swords would in no way, shape, or form be legal now. And they definitely did not feel good to get hit with. So it was that's where it came from.
Oh yeah.
We've got one topic left. Let's talk about staying concise. What does that mean when you're teaching?
I can just leave for this one.
Don't let the ADHD demons take you away. But it's really just have a plan, keep a plan, teach that person the one or two things you think is most important. Because if you're going to trail off and go into some sort of tangent, they're not going to remember anything.
There's a lot of us in foam fighting that are neurodiverse and specifically autistic, and there's a tendency for people that are neurodiverse to make sure that you cover everything. I have to make sure that every little thing is said. When you're teaching, that's not true. You don't need
sometimes less is more.
Exactly. You don't need to tell the history of this thing, and you don't need to say these are the different things that you do in these different scenarios. Say the thing. You just go with it. And I think important also with that is that they may not get it. They may not get it yet. Because I can't tell you the number of times that I've taught somebody something, and I walked out of that interaction saying, man, I suck at this. And then like a month later, I see them at an event, and they come up and they're like, I've been killing people with that thing like all day, and it's just like,
it feels so good.
It does. But you're like, you didn't even get it when I was teaching you, but they remembered that lesson. Maybe they saw somebody else do it. Maybe somebody else taught them the exact same thing, and that repetition was key, and now they got it. So your lesson can still be effective, even if they're not picking it up in that moment. Let's concisely discuss this subject. What do you think, Dalos?
Sometimes it's years later when you're talking about topics with people that are on the more advanced side of it, and you're talking about nuance and the more advanced pieces, and they'll come back 2 years later from a discussion and be like, I finally got that one piece you were telling me. It's this, it's this, it's this. And you're like, motherfucker, finally. Oh, sorry, I swear. but like, I would say for myself, it's always the keep it simple rule. Like I try to keep everything very simple, even the nuanced topics. I'm like, it's this, it's this, it's this. That's all you need to worry about. Like the step right example that was used. All you need to worry about is stepping right. That's all I want you to focus on. That's it. But that's all. I'm like, that's all you need to worry about. That's what's broken. Fix that first. But I have to do this, this, and this. I'm like, none of that's going to work until you fix that. Sorry. And you build it piece by piece by piece by piece. Because remember that part I said about don't die first? They were going to die a lot until that part got fixed. And so the whole don't die first piece came back down to that. And I would say to get there, you reverse engineer why they're dying and start fixing it from that. This is why you're dying. Let's fix the bottom layer and then build your way back up. And then concisely do boom, 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 one piece at a time.
Horus, you wanted to hide on this one, but I wanted to at least ask if you had anything to jump in with.
No, I don't actually want to hide. What I was going to say is that if you do find yourself over explaining, just bring it back. Even if you've gotten far off topic, spaced repetition is like a really good way to learn something, and like you can do that over the short term as well as over the long term. Practicing something every 2 weeks but also repeating points that you've made before. Your most important point is one that you should continue to make. So if you get a little off topic trying to discuss some minutia of it, just bring it back to the original point, repeat it. Like, don't be beating yourself up because you got lost. As long as you find your way back to the path, and find your way back to the point, like that's really what you're trying to get across, and repeating that point is only going to help them learn it. So
I want to grab that and I want to run with that torch. That's a good pun. So something that I do when I'm field commanding in battles is I say things 3 times. And from what I understand, that's a military thing. If you repeat a command 3 times, people's brains just short circuit and they just do the thing, not not even realizing they're doing it sometimes. And so when you're teaching, you say a thing 3 times. You say it 3 times, say it 3 times. Because if you do that, then their brain latches onto it, and it see, I just did it just now. The other thing that the best way to like stay concise and stay on topic and teach effectively, we've been demonstrating this whole time for 15 episodes now, have an agenda. And have an agenda and tell them what the agenda is, and then walk through the agenda step by step. Because a lot of times a listener or a learner is when you just start vomiting information at them, they try to, subconsciously like outsmart you and be like, well, where's this going? Where's this going? Where's this going to end up? Where's the big switcheroo? And if you just give them an agenda and you stick to it, then they don't have to do that background work. Their brain isn't spinning around where they think it's going because they know where it's going. You already told them. And now they can just absorb that information, Any other thoughts about staying concise?
I will just repeat. Being a basketball coach is a lot of saying the same thing again and again and again and again and again and again and again. I feel like, oh my God, I don't want to say that ever again. But that is what coaching is, not only in foam fighting, but in, I would assume, every sport, even outside of basketball. But in basketball, I can promise you that's what it is. So we're not alone in this, foam coaches. So don't feel too bad about it. It is what it is.
Let's take it to chat. Let's see. We've got a lot of years of experience, a lot of skill, a lot of mastery on the panel today. Chat. Let's see if you have any questions for us. See if there's any questions about coaching specifically that you'd like to ask us. We'd love to hear it. While we're waiting for chat to ask our questions, I want to bring it back to Pippin. She said, "Does that make sense?" Really means, am I explaining this in a good way for you? So I've
actually talked to people directly and asked, am I explaining this well to you?
That's a good thing to say. Drayden, I don't think that we can get Dalos to play drum solo out. Is that it, Dalos? Is that a real drum set, or is that a Guitar Hero kind of thing?
No, that's a real drum set.
Heck yeah.
I have an acoustic upstairs too.
Heck yeah! I didn't know you played the drums. That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
This is a question. This is just for me, because I love playing drums. I haven't played. It's been decades since I've actually played them. How are your elbows doing with sword fighting and also drums? Is there some overlap in terms of like injury, inflammation, anything like that, or is it fine?
No, because I learned like the proper method from a very good drum instructor, so that I didn't overtax my elbows.
Awesome.
Early on, like the Molnar method, so that I was like using the right bounce back. You know what I mean? So I would say, and I haven't played a ton recently, but yeah, I learned the proper way to conserve myself, I guess, and not overuse my elbows, not hit like this. You know what I mean? More like
we're not punk drumming with it.
Yeah.
So fun fact about me is that I did 12 years of jazz drum set before doing foam fighting. And it has only made my percussion gave me the groundwork to fight better.
100%. I 100% agree with that, because you fight in the spaces in between the beats. You learn to do that. That is 100% true.
You get separation between your hands and feet, separation between your head and your body. You can use your ears to differentiate people's movement. It is a whole other thing that I'm sure Dalos and I could talk about for hours, about how drum sets, percussion, music can affect you become a better fighter.
Yeah, Anatole and I had this discussion as well.
I don't play the drums, but I love that. That's actually basically what I'm trying to do to everyone, is like learn their beat and then completely play off of it. I think that does actually sort of tie into this topic too, is that like when you're trying to teach someone, like you, instead of finding kind of their tempo and their beat and then like ruining it, you actually want to like lean into that, like kind of use that to help your point get across.
So it sounds like, and Brazen's chiming in as well, that being in a band has absolutely helped, their fighting. So like, it sounds like potentially music could be something to use as a teaching tool or an effective way to, to think about fighting. I also use, music is also a great emotional motivator, for sword fighting as well. Sometimes it's hard to practice with like headphones in and stuff. They get knocked out, or maybe you don't hear calls or something like that that can stress you out. But like, playing music before I get out of my car, when I'm getting ready to fight, that's one of the best ways to hype myself up and get those emotions going so that I can fight, with passion and that kind of stuff. So, there's all kinds of overlap and motivations, music that you. When I get
Another thing.
Go ahead.
Another thing that I use that's non-traditional teaching is that I teach people how to skateboard as like an intermediate to footwork. Because if you cross your feet, you die. You fall on your face. So I have them skate for a long time to learn how to separate their feet, learn how to open their hips, learn how to shift their hips and their weight, have them go down a hill, go up a hill if they can. And that is something that could really help someone who's struggling with intermediate footwork. Is skateboarding.
That's wild, and it makes sense.
This is my long lost son. I came up skateboarding. Like,
we both defensive fighters.
If I want
to
fix my feet, I should get a skateboard.
Yeah.
I probably can't even stand up straight on it.
I will not get on when I destroyed my leg when I was 13, 14, trying to drop in on a ramp. You will not find me on a skateboard ever again. Farron asks, what skill level of fighter is the hardest to teach and why? Dalos, let's start with you.
I don't have trouble teaching any skill level of fighter. I've taught people that were already top of the mountain fighters that wanted to hone a certain and specific skill, or wanted to get better, to base level. This is my first week out. So you just have to be able to craft your teaching game to deal with whichever scenario. I think that it's just different and you just learn how to deal with it. As long as their attitude is that they want to learn, then I don't have an issue with either extreme.
Fox, what do you think?
That's what.
Go ahead, Horus. Go ahead.
That's what I would say. Sorry, go ahead.
To carry on what Tanith was saying earlier, with when Tanith became a warlord originally, the intermediate fighter who thinks they're hot shit. Because they think that they know they're so good, they could beat anyone, they just need that little bit of help. And no matter what you tell them, it's not the little bit of help they actually need. They need a humble. Need to go back to basics.
Mm-hmm.
That was my answer. Is a new person, unless new people who've never done any kind of sport in their life, I think can be very difficult to teach, just because there's a level of just basic physical coordination that might not be present, and so it's just getting them to try to throw a shot and they just don't have the muscle coordination or anything, that can be a struggle. But that's kind of a modifier. A regular new person doesn't necessarily have that problem. But to your point, a mid-level fighter who just they're living their cocky dream and they just kind of want to do what they want to do and the way they want to do it, they're not going to learn anything because they don't want to.
Well, you just have to like destroy them for a while until they know. Like, okay, either you want to learn, or like I have to keep wrecking you. Like I won't let them hit me at all. Period. I mean, if they win, but they won't. And then they either want to learn or they don't. and that's what it boils down to. By the way, I don't like the consent thing. People come to ask me to teach them. I don't voluntarily teach people anymore. I just don't have time for it. So, you know, I don't generally get those kind of people anymore with the challenge in them. Every now and then it happens. And by the way, I'm too old to deal with it anymore. I let like my squires or Lily or someone like that deal with it, because like I'm mostly broken. And but people who still want to learn from me, I'll still teach even today. But yeah, like you just put it to them for a while, and after a while they get it, and they're like, okay, I still have a long way to go. I have to learn, and then they'll learn. They'll come around.
I'd like to call out. Go ahead.
I was young once like that. You know, Harry had to put it to me for a while before I was willing to learn.
I'd like to, Horus, I'm going to get to you in just a second. I want to call out Pippin's comment, because we got 3 boys and an NB in here, and we don't have any women on this panel, but I think that is an incredibly salient point. The hardest person to teach, in her opinion, is a sexist man. And I want to drive that point home, that that's something that all of us have the privilege of not necessarily having to deal with. But if someone doesn't respect you on account of your gender, you're not going to be able to teach them. You might be able to teach them something, but you're not going to teach them to get better as a fighter. You might teach them how to not be sexist if you whoop their ass a few times. But you know, I think it's not going to work naturally. But I think that's a really salient point, and something to consider in these kind of interactions too, is like, what are the different socio dynamics between people? You know, what are the privileges that people have? And like, you know, I can't imagine being in that situation where somebody is just not going to learn from me because of, you know, what gender I identify as, you know. So that can definitely be something that's frustrating. Horus, what's your who's the hardest to teach?
It doesn't really have anything to do with their skill level, and has everything to do with their attitude. Like, your identities as a person and the things that you like truly believe will get in the way of you learning things if you just believe that certain things are true. And even if you just believe I'm bad at this, you're not going to do stuff that's good because you just don't believe that you can. So you're not going to try. You're not going to like let yourself get in there. You're going to self-sabotage yourself. People who think, you know, I'm better than a woman, I'm going to always do everything right, you can't teach me anything, they're not going to believe you even when you're beating them into the ground. Like, because in their mind, they're going to rationalize all the reasons that you beat them this time, but that's just because of this. It's just because you got the jump on them this time. Like, if they just don't believe that in their head, that you can teach them something, it doesn't matter if they come and ask you because they feel like they have to for some reason, they're not going to learn that. So that the hardest person to teach is someone that has a lot of preconceived ideas and has like a very low openness to learning in the first place. Like, if they think that you're going to just give them a magic key and then they're going to use that and they're going to go do it, it's not going to be conducive to an environment of learning. Like, people who just have their minds made up before you talk to them, those are the hardest people to teach, because frankly, like, you probably can't.
I want to touch on something you said about people who believe they suck. So I fight my Amtgard part. I fight at on Sundays as Night's Rest, and there's a lot of good fighters there. And I think we have 7 or 8 warlords that play there, and a lot of new people can get intimidated showing up to Night's Rest, and people will fight for months and months and months, and they will just be like, I'm never gonna get good at this. I am so awful. And what something that I can explain to them is like, look at your environment, look at the people that are teaching you, look at the people that you're fighting. Let's travel, right? Let's go to another park next week. Let's visit, Newbie Shire, 30, 40 minutes this way. And a lot of times what happens is the people from my park will go to these other, newer parks, and they'll whoop everybody's ass. And they'll just be like, holy shit, I'm good at this. And it's like, yes, you're good at this.
Mhm.
You're just fighting decades and decades of experience every Sunday. And, it's hard to see your value as a fighter when, because they're always going to have that experience on you. So sometimes I think that just goes along with what you're saying, Horus, is when they have a preconceived notion. Sometimes you just have to physically break that down. It goes along with, the person that's cocky just whooping their ass over and over again. You have to break down those preconceived notions to get past the teaching barrier. Let's talk final thoughts on the subject. Final thoughts on coaching. It's the most important thing we can do as a community is teach and just get people, bring people up, get them better, get them encouraged, get them learning. Because as human beings, besides running long distances, our superpower is generational knowledge. That's what we have over every other animal in the animal kingdom. And we're just playing our part in that by passing that generational knowledge down to the next generation of fighters.
I always strive to be the best teacher, never the best fighter. And sometimes that comes hand in hand. If you're constantly teaching the basics to people, you're constantly teaching people how to be better, you will get better too. And Brayson's right, we have thumbs.
Yeah. I would definitely just say that when you teach, you're also learning, and it's a two-way street. So it's always good, even if you don't really know that much, teach what you do know, and then continue to use that to grow. And as you grow, you'll be better at teaching too.
Dalos, final thoughts.
Yeah, you definitely need to. Well, like I said earlier, I had a mandate from my pops, which I thought was very important, to help the people with the gifts that I was given. I think that foam fighting was definitely a gift that I was given, and the ability to coach other people was another gift that I was given. And so I try to use those things in combination to give back to the community that I've been part of for a long, long time now. And the other piece of that is, in the drive to get better, the only way to continue to have people push me was to show them the things that I was doing, right? And we did that here in Central Texas, like all of us, especially Arthon and myself, pushed each other so hard. Like, this is what we're doing. Call Abyss, Draknar, like all of the Chosen was like some more than others, but we pushed each other to get better. We did start showing, at least internally, even before someone take a shot at SKBC, even before that came around, some of our tricks. You know what I mean? And the learning and the growth happened, right? Here we go, boom. And so we did that. And if you want the people around you to grow and get better, you have to coach them, you have to teach them, and that will only empower you as well, because as they get better, you will also get better, and the game grows and you grow, and a rising tide floats all boats, and that's one of my favorite sayings.
Fox, I know you got something to plug, so let's talk about Frostbane.
Yeah, so Frostbane is coming up soon. It's going to be in Central Florida at the end of January, early February. We're going to be having at a Camp Kiwanis, which is a well-known area that Kingdom Neverwinter has been using their site for a long time. It's got cabins, it's got EC dorms. It's going to have lots of night fighting. We're going to have lots of classes. We're going to have a big dragon battle for people to go and do. Be lots of fighting. It's a great way to get out of the snow, hence Frostbane. There's some airports nearby, and if you need help getting to places, just let me know, and I'll try to help you out.
Heck yeah. I want to thank Dalos. I want to thank Fox. Thank you guys so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you very much, and appreciate your time, and, appreciate you being here for us. So, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Heck yeah.
Thank you.
Horus, let's talk about this Sunday. This Sunday, 7
Oh,
p.m.
fuck.
Do you forget about it?
Yeah.
If you can't do it, I can handle it by
No,
myself.
I can do it. I
Okay.
can do it.
This Sunday at 7 p.m., the Belgarth Board of Directors would like to extend an invitation to our first public open forum, hosted by our friends. Wait, this way. Our friends at the bench. Well, the board is only required to have one public officers meeting per year. We would like to start having these occasional informal open forums. So this Sunday at 7 p.m. Central, we will be hosting the board of directors open forum. So this is and we're going to be moderating it and moderating the questions as well. So this is your opportunity to ask these board members any reasonable question that you'd like to hear a straight answer about, and we'll keep it entertaining for you because we're the bench, and we'll keep it safe for them because we're going to moderate it, and I hope you guys show up for that. So let's see. Gorg wants to say the reverence that Dalos shows for his father's words is very beautiful, and I agree with that. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty touching. Thanks for coming to the bench. As always, we're Tanith and Horus. We will we will see you soon. I thought of a new thing, like a new tagline. Anyway, you say your piece, and then I'll give my tagline for closing.
I don't have a piece.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for watching, everyone. It's
Fair
been
enough.
great. This is good.
Be true to yourself and don't hide. Catch y'all later.
I love it.